The night was supposed to be simple on paper. Another stop along the road for a star who had already tasted global fame, already carried the weight of expectation on his shoulders long before he ever stepped into the ring. But boxing nights like this are never simple. They breathe, they shift, they twist expectations into something heavier, something harder to explain once the final bell rings. Ryan Garcia versus Rolando Romero was billed as a clash of American personalities, power, and ego, yet what unfolded inside the ropes told a far more layered story, one that revolved around control, hesitation, and how a single moment can reshape the narrative of an entire fight. As the arena lights dimmed and the crowd noise swelled, you could feel that electricity that only comes when two recognizable names are about to collide. First through the curtain was Rolando "Raleigh" Romero, fighting out of the blue corner, draped in pink and yellow, carrying himself with the unmistakable swagger of a man who thrives on chaos. At 146.6 pounds, with a record of 16 wins and 13 knockouts against 2 losses, Romero looked strong at the weight, thicker through the torso, planted firmly on the canvas as if daring the night to move him. He had come from Las Vegas with the reputation of a disruptor, a fighter who doesn't need polish if he can land something heavy enough to change everything. Then came Ryan Garcia. Blue trunks, red corner, a half-inch taller, slightly heavier at 146.8 pounds. But far more significant was what he carried invisibly into the ring. 24 wins, 20 knockouts, 1 loss, 1 no contest. A resume built not just on speed and power, but on expectation. Garcia didn't just walk to the ring. He glided composed, eyes focused, jaw set. This wasn't a man looking for validation. This was a fighter intent on reminding everyone exactly who he was. From the opening bell, the difference in approach was immediate. Garcia didn't rush. He didn't try to overwhelm Romero with flash or reckless speed. Instead, he established authority with one of the most underrated weapons in boxing when used correctly, the jab. Sharp, stiff, and disciplined, Garcia's jab snapped Romero's head back early, not once but repeatedly, carving out distance and rhythm like a craftsman measuring each cut before committing to the blade. This wasn't an accident. This was a statement. Romero stalked forward as expected, but Garcia refused to give him clean lanes. The jab wasn't just touching Romero's face. It was tapping his chest, brushing his arms, interrupting his timing. Every time Romero tried to set his feet, Garcia's lead hand reminded him that this was not going to be a brawl on his terms. It was, for much of the first round, a boxing exhibition disguised as a firefight. There had been endless talk before the bout about Garcia reconnecting with disciplined fundamentals, about structure replacing chaos, and those words came to life almost immediately. His footwork was measured, his balance steady. He wasn't chasing Romero. He was inviting him into mistakes. And for a moment, it looked like the plan was working flawlessly. But boxing, more than any other sport, is cruel to perfection. It doesn't care how clean your rounds look if you allow even a second of vulnerability. The second round altered everything. Romero, patient in a way few expected, found his opening not through volume, but through timing. Garcia, mid-exchange, slightly off rhythm, left just enough space. That was all Romero needed. A double left hook exploded into Garcia's chin, sharp and sudden. The kind of punch you don't see until you're already on the canvas. Garcia went down. The arena gasped, not because Garcia was finished, far from it, but because the script had just been torn in half. This was the moment that would hang over the rest of the fight, like a shadow, regardless of what followed. Garcia rose quickly, his eyes clear, his legs steady, but something had undeniably shifted. The confidence remained, but caution had crept in. From that point forward, Garcia became more selective, not hesitant in fear, but respectful of Romero's power. And in boxing, respect can sometimes look like restraint. Romero pressed harder after the knockdown, emboldened by the knowledge that he had cracked the armor. He tried to turn the fight into a physical grind, backing Garcia toward the ropes, throwing wide, looping shots meant to force exchanges. Yet even under pressure, Garcia's technique never unraveled. He blocked, rolled, stepped out just enough to reset the distance. He continued to land the cleaner punches, particularly with the jab, snapping Romero's head back, disrupting his forward momentum. Round after round, this dynamic repeated itself. Romero came forward, strong, determined, occasionally wild. Garcia stayed poised, economical, landing the more accurate shots, even as he resisted committing fully to prolonged exchanges. It wasn't the Garcia of highlight reels, but it was the Garcia of high-level boxing IQ. The commentary circled the same question again and again. Would Garcia separate himself? Would he step on the gas and remind everyone of his finishing instincts? But context matters. This was a fight at 147 pounds against a naturally strong opponent, one who had already proven he could hurt him. Garcia wasn't just chasing a knockout. He was navigating risk. As the rounds ticked away, Romero's confidence grew louder than his effectiveness. He flexed. He postured. He celebrated moments that looked bigger than they truly were. Garcia, meanwhile, stayed focused, landing straight shots down the middle, scoring points even when the crowd reacted more to Romero's aggression than Garcia's precision. Statistically, the fight told a story that didn't always match the noise. Garcia was more accurate. He landed the cleaner punches. He controlled the range. Outside of the knockdown, Romero struggled to land consistently flush. Yet boxing judges don't score intention or aesthetics. They score moments, impact, and sometimes perception. By the championship rounds, urgency crept into both corners. Garcia's team urged him to throw more, to add combinations, to ensure the rounds couldn't be stolen. Romero, knowing the fight was close, surged forward with renewed energy, throwing in bunches, trying to overwhelm Garcia with activity rather than accuracy. The 10th round was chaos wrapped in tension. Romero swarmed, Garcia countered. Hooks flew, jabs snapped, and both fighters refused to give ground. It was the kind of round that leaves judges split and fans arguing before the bell even rings. When it was over, both men stood exhausted but unbroken. Garcia leaned on the ropes briefly, breathing deeply, replaying moments in his mind. Romero celebrated as if victory were already his, feeding off the crowd, flexing, smiling, convinced that aggression had carried the night. The decision, when it came, was controversial in the way only boxing decisions can be. Two judges scored at 115 to 112. One scored a wide 118 to 109. The unanimous decision went to Rolando Romero. But numbers don't always tell the full truth of fight, and neither do raised hands. Looking back at the footage, the story becomes clearer. The knockdown in round 2 loomed large, perhaps larger than it should have. From that moment forward, Garcia boxed with intelligence, discipline, and restraint. He landed more clean shots. He controlled the pace for long stretches. He avoided unnecessary damage. He showed growth. Romero won the narrative moment. Garcia won many of the technical ones. This fight wasn't a collapse for Ryan Garcia. It was a lesson, a reminder of how thin the margins at the highest level. One lapse can outweigh 9 round control in the eyes of judges and fans alike. Yet it also showed a version of Garcia that many had questioned, a fighter willing to adapt, to box smart, to survive adversity without unraveling. In the end, the official result may read as a loss, but the performance told a more complex story. Ryan Garcia walked out of that ring having proven he could take a shot, recover, and still command large portions of fight against a dangerous opponent. For a fighter still writing his legacy, that matters, because in boxing, careers aren't defined by one decision. They're defined by how fighters respond, how they evolve, and how they